call this to order, and I will take the roll. The first order of business is we have meeting minutes from our last standing committee meeting. Do I have a motion to accept?
And make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aaron, you're on mute.
He's not on our committee.
Yeah,
Oh,
came in a little early.
Isn't it Reggie and you?
oh,
Are
he
the
said aye,
officials?
so you're right.
All right, I
mine
will
go?
then turn it over to Matt for the tax budget.
Good evening, everybody. I sent out an email about 2:30 or so with the tax budget. So you can either look at that to follow along, or I can share my screen, whichever way is easier for you all.
Share your
Uh,
screen because I picked up my stuff and I don't see it in here.
I didn't get it finished until this afternoon.
Right.
Oh, okay.
All right, so this document is almost entirely procedural. It's so we can get all of our property tax money for the subsequent year. Let me start sharing. Okay, so a few of the things that I just want to bring to everyone's attention. It's through here. Here is where we are saying the amounts that we need from the county for our property tax levies. Here we put in more than what they say we're probably going to get, because if you undershoot this amount here, then they won't give you the full amount. So it's best to go above. So for instance, they said we would get a little over $1 million in the general fund and about 4.6 in the fire fund. So that's why those numbers are a little bit higher. It's just so we don't say we need less than what we can actually get. All right. And the main item that I want to talk about, since this document, it's really early in the planning process for the next year. There's not a lot to get from it, but you can kind of get a sense of how the next year is going to go. So if I go to the tail end of the general fund, this line right here is our projected ending fund balance in the general fund. As you can see, that number is projected to rise fairly substantially from where it had been. I believe before 19 it was around 5. It was just under 6 million. So by the end of next year, with things going basically as we had planned on the expenditure side, we're looking at having that general fund balance to be about $9.5 million. The main reason for that is the American Rescue Plan funds that we are projecting to receive from the federal government. The latest projection we've seen is over 2 years, we're supposed to get 3.6 million. And it's going to be split between 1.8 that comes this year and 1.8 that comes in 2022. I think that right now the main usage of those funds, the reason why they're showing here in the general, is because we plan to use those monies for revenue recapture from where we had lost income tax during 2020. That's an approved use of these funds as opposed to the CARES Act funds that came out last year. And then the rest of the money, we're going to use that to offset police salaries. And once we do that, that money can go to the general fund and, well, it relieves expenditures from the general fund and basically makes that money unrestricted for us, and we can use it for a wider array of projects. I'm not sure if Don wants to chime in on this one or not.
Sure. Essentially, what we're saying is that the CARES Act money and all those, the three acts, I'll call them all the CARES Act, that money has certain restrictions on it, and our general fund monies do not. And one of the restrictions and one of the uses that's approved is to pay the salaries of quote unquote first responders. And it's listed, it's a safe harbor. I would call it safe harbor in that it specifically lists various positions. The only positions that we have that are specifically listed that are in the general fund are the police salaries. So if we use that money to pay their police salaries, then that frees up general fund money that is unrestricted to be used where we can have discussions about how we might want to use that money. So we're taking restricted money and using it for a specific purpose, thus freeing up unrestricted money for purposes that we can use later on. Basically, any way that the city council or the city wants to do it. So that's kind of the way we're looking at it, and I think it makes a lot of sense because this basically allows us to spend that money the way we want to spend it without any huge restrictions from the federal government.
Don and Matt, that's of course one-time money. It doesn't solve our long-term problem. What is the finance committee saying long-term structurally about our income and expenditures and where we need to go?
Me, you. We're talking, if you remember a few years ago, we discussed the potential need for a tax increase.
Right.
And we are, what this does is it allows us the flexibility and the time. Really, all it's really doing is buying us time.
Right.
To get to a position where economic development and increases in jobs and wages and so forth, some of those programs and things that are happening that have happened have a chance to start kicking in. The effect of the COVID won't be felt, we don't believe, until next year. So but you're right. This is one-time money that allows us to buy time to see some of the economic development things that we've been doing and start producing funds in the long run. So hopefully we won't need that tax increase.
And as Don mentioned as well, we won't know the full effect on the income tax until next year, because the rule that prevents people working from home from requesting refunds from the city they were working in prior has expired now. So next time we'll see a whole lot more refund requests, and this point it's hard to really quantify that number.
Right.
So that's going to be an additional challenge moving forward, going into next year.
All right. I know that was on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I believe coming into, or before we put in the ARP funds, we were structurally imbalanced by around $1 million.
Right.
And then that's not taking into account the expected decrease, but we don't know how much of the income tax for next year.
Okay.
Luckily, the income tax so far in 2021 is more on par with what it was in 19 than what it was last year.
Okay.
So that's a good sign.
That is a good sign.
Do we have somewhat a percentage of a shortfall on income tax that was not so far not received by the tax deadline?
phrasing it like that, not I'm not sure, but the one metric that I have looked at would be when I was comparing it to 2019,
Yeah.
the receipts that had come in through May in 19, because last year, since the tax deadline was pushed back so far and all of the effects of COVID, last year you just kind of have to throw it out in terms of like figuring out like where you stand. But comparing this year to 19 through May, we were only down about $200,000. And in 19, we had Jacobs. And this year we don't. So
Right.
we're doing pretty well compared to pre-COVID times. And last year, I believe I calculated the effect on COVID that we had lost in the income tax was roughly $600,000. And the estimator was, I believe, 9.6 million.
We also had, we cut our budget significantly last year
Yes, we did.
as, in response and anticipation of this. So the effect, as you can see, we anticipate actually having more money. Quite frankly, a lot more money than we had a couple of years ago. And I think that's the economic development starting to kick in as well. But it also reflects a lot of the cutbacks that we had last year in terms of discretionary spending. We cut the significant amount come March or April, and we'll you know we think that we may be able to bring some of the expenditures back, but again, we're trying to be fiscally conservative and make sure that we've got our fun, not just to go out and spend money because we have some of this one-time money, but we need to make sure that we have enough money to sustain us in some of the downtimes. And we think that that's probably the most prudent way to do it. So, using it, basically putting in and having expenditures that we already had budgeted anyway,
Right.
basically saves the money so that we can use it into the future. And we think that's a pretty prudent way to go. For some of the folks who might be watching, the tax budget, it has it's not, just so everybody knows, it really isn't the city's budget. It's the first step of the budget process. And what this does is allow us the ability to prove our need for our taxes, our property taxes. And it generates, the next step will be us to approve that millage, and then it will generate essentially what our revenue estimates are, our certificate of estimated resources, which includes beginning balance and everything that we can budget. And once we get to that point, that's when we start really truly passing a budget and considering how we're going to spend the money in 2022. This is just the first step, first estimates that proves our need for our property taxes.
If I might, just a couple of quick things that I think the city needs to be looking at down the road. You already mentioned the situation where the state legislature is not going to give up on taking away our ability to collect our own taxes. I mean, that's just a given.
Yeah.
Secondly, along that same line, and Don just mentioned that we, the one-time money is going to be just that. It's one time. I think we made wise decisions in terms of we aren't going to just go out and spend. We're going to try to warehouse as much of that as we can for the down the road. There is a third thing that at our last few meetings of the mayors that we've been talking about, that's going to be a direct indirect result of the pandemic, and that is when people are looking to go back to work and can't or don't, there's a projection that there is going to be a massive influx of homelessness. And in a lot of instances where municipalities have not dealt with that on their own, but has looked to the county to deal with it, for the first time, we may be called upon to look at housing some people who lose their homes, whether they are houses and or apartments. They're going to have somewhere to go, and they're going to be turning to us. It's a problem that we've never had to deal with, but we're being told that, hey, you may want to start looking at down the road, what are you going to do? And what can you do? Obviously, it's not going to be free. That's it.
Just very quickly, Matt, is there anything else, because we're up against council work session time?
No, there's nothing else that I had for. If everyone wants to look it over and if they have any questions, just shoot me an email and I can get back with you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Matt.